Hi there. Welcome to another presentation of the Sound Healing Conference. We have Jeffrey Thompson again. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, good to be here.
Welcome, welcome. Dr. Jeffrey Thompson is a pioneer in the realm of sound healing and has dedicated his life to the exploration and scientific application of sound frequencies for healing the body, mind, and spirit. Initially starting his career in 1980 as a chiropractor in Virginia, Dr. Thompson transformed his holistic health center into one of the state's largest. During this period, he's discovered the therapeutic potential of sound frequencies, using them for effective spinal adjustments and even stimulating organ function. He moved to California and expanded his research and teaching endeavors as a faculty member at a graduate school and research center there. He delved deeper into the realms of behavioral psychoacoustics and clinical neuroacoustic therapy, leading to the development of his innovative biotuning system. This unique system utilizes specific sound frequencies to induce various brain states, promoting relaxation, focus, and creativity. His contributions to the field extend to his creation of popular brainwave entrainment audio programs, including Brainwave Suite, Alpha Relaxation System, and Delta Sleep System, and Gamma Meditation System. As a founding member of the Center for Neuroacoustic Research, an organization dedicated to the study of sounds profound healing power. He continues to inspire and enable others to enhance their health and well-being through advanced sound healing technologies. His body of work and expertise are a testament to his dedication to this fascinating field. It's
A
just all
testament.
testament.
A
It's like,
testament.
it's really, I've kind of gotten really radar for people that are just trying to, make a lot of money or be cool, right? And
Yeah.
those that really want to help as many people as possible. And it seems
And
that you're really,
it becomes easier and easier to see the difference the more experience you have. It's,
I,
yeah, I mean, to me, the benchmark is I'd be doing this for free if I could.
right, right,
You
yeah,
know, it's like if money was no object, if you won the lottery tomorrow, 50 million bucks, what would you do? Um, and if the answer to that is different than what you're doing, then you should start questioning. I mean, yeah, okay, I'd probably maybe go on a vacation to exotic places around the world and spend a lot of money and update my car and update my house. But sooner or later, I've bought the stuff, I've been to all the places, and I'm back in my mansion where I was before I started with the same question. What am I going to do with all this money? I've done that stuff, got it out of my system. Now what? you know, so then the question boils down to what gets your juices flowing.
I
I
love it.
really
Well,
think that that's the absolute core of where illness comes from. It's spiritual illness. In the past, I've mentioned before this concept that we're all treading this path in our lives to going somewhere, and in the cosmic sense, it's the greatest heroic journey of all time to seek out why I'm here and what I'm here to do and what this is all about and what's my place in the universe. The problem is that gets stuffed early on. When I'm a child, I'm 100% in that. I just follow my heart and do all this play. I do this stuff that makes me happy and gets my juices flowing, and it's me and the world and my friends, and nothing else matters. At a certain point, at age 7, somewhere around age 7, I have my first moment of self-awareness. I look in the mirror and I realize that I'm looking out of my eyes. I'm not just looking at my face. Somebody's in there looking out of my eyes and my face. And I get that all of a sudden, that I'm here. Also, by the way, that is the moment at 7 years old when the first crystalline forms start to deposit in the pineal gland. So something about the crystal deposits in the pineal gland, which have piezoelectric effects and, atomic lattice structures and all the rest, have special properties, is associated with self-awareness. As time goes on, more and more of these crystals begin to form in the pineal gland. The pineal gland is smaller than this last joint of my little finger. It's like the size of a grain of sand, a grain of rice, about that size. So these crystals inside the pineal are called brain sand because they're so small. But if you use, electron microscope, you can see their crystalline structures, like sort of like this guy. And crystals have special properties that is above and beyond any other structure because of this property of piezoelectric activity. So if I put pressure on the crystal, I put torque on the crystal, pressure on the crystal, it distorts the lattice work and generates an electrical pulse from nowhere. So I've got this cool little acupuncture stim device. It looks like a pen, looks like a sort of a fat pen with a plunger thing at the end. And the other end has got a brass fitting, and you put that brass fitting on top of the point and you push the plunger and you get a jolt of electricity that makes you jump. And there's no batteries in this thing. It's purely the piezoelectric effect. Down on the end of that tube is a teeny tiny little crystal, and that little button has got a long wire pushing up against the crystal. So when I push that, it puts pressure and generates an electrical pulse. And in the body, it's sort of the same way. This concept that my body is 70% water, but that's not exactly right. It's biological water. It's a colloidal water that has special properties. The water in our bodies sort of balances on this razor edge of colloidal water on the one hand and liquid crystal on the other hand with piezoelectric properties. And what pushes it over the edge is torque. And torque means you put pressure on it, right? So there's an electromagnetic component of sound, for instance. So if we were sitting in the room together and I'm talking to you, we're sitting close to each other, I'm talking to you, most of the wave front of the pressure wave of the air molecules from my voice going across the room and channeling down to your eardrum is the teeny tiny little percentage of the whole wavefront of a sound that's impacting your body, your whole body. Right, the whole wavefront is coming towards you, impacting your whole body. Some of it's going down your ear, but the wavefront of pressure sound is pure energy moving through a medium at a certain frequency, and it's not electromagnetic. It's the only thing in the universe that's not electromagnetic. So essentially, we have this yin-yang in the universe. I was taught that the electromagnetism and E equals mc squared and photons is the electromagnetic spectrum that everything in the universe is made of. But that's not true. Half of it is sound, pure energy moving through a medium at a certain frequency, and the two of those interact together. So the wavefront of my voice speaking, impacting the cells at the surface of your skin, puts pressure on them and flips that colloidal water into a liquid crystal because it's just been torqued and generates an electrical pulse in the shape of the sound wave. Right, so all these sound waves, so when I'm speaking to you, it's got form, I'm shooting packets of shaped sound waves at you as I shape them with my mouth, and those are impacting your body, and when they hit your body, the sound waves stop, get absorbed, become electromagnetic force, piezoelectric effect, heat, a bunch of other stuff like that, and continues onto my body and through my body as an electromagnetic wave front that causes the next ones to fire and the next ones to fire and the next ones to fire and the next ones to fire. So there's the electromagnetic counterpart through piezoelectric activity of any sound you hear. Music is doing that, me talking to you is doing that. The sound work that we're doing with Tibetan bowls, or if you've got a sound chair, a sound table with low frequencies coming in electronically, this work I'm doing with biotuning, where I'm hooking you up to devices to see how your nervous system is working and rebalancing it with a precise sound wave, all of that stuff is causing this additional sort of effect. And when there's something called sonoluminescence. I'm sure you've heard of that. So
it creates light in the
right,
sound there waves, as well.
Sound waves create light under certain circumstances. So you've got
so there's electromagnetism there's electricity, and there's electromagnetism that's light as well, right?
No, it's all the same thing.
All the same
Photons
thing. Yeah.
and electromagnetic phenomenon are all part of the same sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So when we look at the elements of the periodic table, we've got protons and neutrons and electrons. Electrons are spinning around in these, quote, shells. The shells are basically areas of least resistance where it would naturally be drawn to cycle there. And the shells are spherical, right? It's not like you see normally when you see a picture of an atom, it looks like a sun with planets around it. It's really a spherical shells. And those spherical shells are really resonance. The atom is causing resonance, and the resonance is obeying the laws of music theory, octaves and harmonic ratios, a la like Pythagoras. So that means we have orbital shells, three-dimensional shells around the nucleus of the atom, that the electrons, which are also not the little things that you usually draw a picture of, they're areas of vibration in motion that are falling in these ripple patterns. Just like you drop a pebble into a pond and you get these sort of sine wave ripples kind of moving out. Imagine that being spherical ripples moving out and forming harmonic zones, so that the atom is not going to be on the top of the little mountains. It's going to slide down into the valley. And that's the shell. The shell is forming little valleys where it wants to be because it's unstable at the top. So
I want to go ahead.
Just one more thing. When those electrons shift from one shell to the next, from one ripple valley to the next, it releases energy in the form of photons. And those photons are highly precise color frequencies that are displayed as angstrom color frequencies, accurate to 10 decimal points. And so that's the color spectral fingerprint of each element that you use in science to tell what a nebula in the sky is made of, what gases it's made of, because you do a spectrograph of it and you see these color fingerprints and you can tell what elements of the periodic table it's made of. So that was a project to take the color frequencies of elements in the periodic table and do the math necessary to convert them over to sound and drop them 45 octaves and generate what would be the sound equivalent of what the atom looks like.
I love it. So, oh my God. Okay, so this ties into my big question, which is to zoom out as to how the basically the whole body and the whole universe works. So let me see if I can explain.
That's the big question.
right. And so this
no small conversations here.
Right. So here's how far I've gotten is for the big research project, and I'm serious about this, is to be able to find not only the frequencies, but the timbres, combination of frequencies, the musical interval relationships, and the musical flows of every level of reality in the body. And this is as far as I've gotten, and most of this came from you, actually. So I know as a physics major that you can take the overall organ and you can measure its density, thickness, and size. And there's a mathematical formula that will tell you its exact frequency based on that, right? Then you've got the materials of the organ, which are a different frequency. Then you've got the fluids that you mentioned. Then you've got the cellular frequency. Then you've got the atomic frequency. Then you've got the electromagnetic frequencies, which include the light you're just now talking about. And that's at all levels of the organ or the whole system or limbs or the whole body. It depends on how much you want to zoom in. And then you've got even the quantum frequencies, right, of intention, and which tie into all the emotions and intention. And then you've got all these cosmic. I've just been reading Alice Bailey, and she's saying that, a lot of our sickness comes from the fact that our universe is kind of not perfect. It's kind of a mess a little bit, which is interesting because a lot of people think of it's like God is perfect, right? But there's like a lot of
Actually,
chaos out there.
the only reason that the universe has matter or things is because it's out of balance.
Uh-huh.
When the
Uh-huh.
universe is completely imbalanced, then there's no manifestation of anything. It
Cool.
has to be slightly off in order for things to bump into each other and have,
So,
whether,
so to
yeah,
be
go
able
ahead.
to, I mean, what I'm thinking is to have a range for a human being like this, right? For each of those levels of vibration. So we got like, okay, the heart, the sizes of the heart and density and thickness for a human is from here to here. A liver is for here to here. The materials of, muscles and nerves and tendons, and they all have their frequency from here to here for humans. It varies. And all the cells have a frequency from here to here, all the atomic levels. And then we get into the light and stuff. So we get that whole map. And I'm assuming that the relationship between the different levels is going to be a very specific harmonic musical relationship
I agree.
as far as the musical
It,
intervals, right? So if we figure out the cell or the overall heart, we can probably kind of tell what the cells are going to be, most likely. Maybe not. I'm not. That's some. I
no,
don't know.
I think deductive reasoning would lead to that conclusion. Everything else in the universe seems to obey the same laws and rules of octave
Harmonics.
octave resonance and harmonic resonance.
Mhm.
So
So this is, I figure, this is a big project, but if we can get this map of frequencies and timbres and flows at each level, that's like that's like the Holy Grail, right? Now we've got the template of perfection, and we look at people when they're, in the zone and healthy, and we can start discerning which ones are healthy or not, and then tune it to that person that's a little bit different. So now we use an electron microscope or something to figure out yours for each level, and then we vibrate you into bliss with not only needles with frequencies, with microcurrents and infrared light and ultrasound and scalar waves and a bit of love from source. And then it's like, oh my God, something's going to happen.
yeah, there seems to be a principle involved. So one thing I started to notice by being in practice for a long time was and I tended to add training in various new holistic techniques that I started collecting together. The idea is uh, if a person could come in and you could check through every system that you're aware of, structure, cranial sacral, organ, gland, biochemistry, gut biome, meridians, chakras, emotions, self-defeating belief systems, anything that you can identify with different techniques to test them, um, and come up with a readout, and then go methodically through each system with a number of different techniques and just balance every single thing you find, people get better. That was the clinic in Virginia. That's what we were up to in Virginia. Um, and in that context was where I began to explore the use of sound as one of those tools. And in the beginning, I was making chiropractic adjustments with sound. And the method I was using was AK, the muscle testing idea. The problem with AK is it's a fine art to learn it correctly, and it's easy enough to learn just enough to get yourself in trouble. So you stop there and you don't continue on to the professional level of uh, towing the line. So you don't sabotage the test unconsciously without your own knowledge.
I actually had this woman who couldn't who couldn't pee. And so I pulled up a picture of the bladder and we did muscle testing on each of the notes. And I
That's it.
found and gave her a CD in the key of P. Right?
The key of P.
And she was able to
Yeah.
pee.
Yeah. So that's basically how I began, where I could do, let's say the very first one was low back problem. My wife at the time, and I've got her on the table in my recording studio where I used to pop my table up to work on her. Then I bought all this equipment and stuck it in the spare room. And then she comes in, wants me to work on her back, so I pop the table up. And then I realize I've been set up because I've got a patient on a treatment table in a recording studio. So I wonder if I can make a chiropractic adjustment with the sound wave. So here's the experiment. You go down to the fifth lumbar, you find a muscle that's good and strong, and you come onto the spinous process, which is the bump that sticks out the back. And here's the body of the vertebra, and here's the spinous process sticking out the back. And I'm going to start pushing it in various directions with my finger. And let's say that this vertebra is rotated too far to the right, and the right facet joint is pinched. And that's causing damage and some pain, and the muscles tighten up to protect it so it can't go out any further, and that hurts too. And I can feel those tight muscles, and I'm pushing the vertebra in different directions. So if I push it in the direction it's out, I just made a bad situation worse. Signals are going to fire to the brain. The red flags are going to be flying. And when the body has a stress response, it unlocks all of its joints and unlocks all of its muscles. That's why the muscle gets weak. It's losing its strength from that standpoint, and it's also losing its strength because I've just forced the brain to prioritize where its attention is going to go. Is it more important to focus its attention on the fifth lumbar that is currently under attack, or to keep the stupid muscle strong? So the brain looks away from the muscle, looks down at the back, and the muscle gets weak. Once I've got that in place, finger on the vertebra, weak muscle, now I can put a weight on my electronic keyboard on middle C and play middle C through the room and see if the muscle responds. Nope. C sharp, no. D, oh, the muscle's getting a little stronger. D sharp, it's very strong. Microtune, because I can tune between any two notes by 100 steps. So I add 1 cent, 2 cents, 3 cents, 5 cents, and it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger until at 15 cents, the muscle's rock hard strong. I take the weight off the key, the muscle's weak. I put the back on the key and play the sound of the muscle strong. So now I know I have found a frequency for the fifth lumbar. How is that possible? Because the internal physician program already knows what's wrong with me on every possible level in my body. It's cataloged. It's on its list. And so when I put pressure and make a bad situation worse, and I play C, I'm basically communicating to the brain and saying, will this tone fix that? And if the answer is yes, the stress response disappears. The only thing that will make the stress response disappear is give the body what it needs to fix it at the same time you're stressing it out, and the two cancel each other out. So there's this wisdom in the biocomputer you can tap into to get the answers you're talking about. The question is, how can you create a high-tech device that replaces the muscle test to communicate with the brain and get a readout from the brain? This way you're getting a readout with yes and no. The answer is, is the fifth lumbar out this way? Answer is no. Is it out this way? Answer is yes. Muscle gets weak. I just made a bad situation worse. Okay, now that this is weak and we know it's out this way, does this tone fix it? No. Does this one fix it? No. Does this one fix it? You're getting warm. Does microtuning fix it? It's getting better and better and better. Or if I shone a color on there, or if I did some Reiki treatment on that, or if, you know what I mean? Now we're standing in a position where we can start to do some testing. But I was never able to come up with a solution of a technological means to replace a muscle test, except
Wasn't
with autonomic nervous system, because there's this advanced heart rate variability system that can pop up the sympathetic parasympathetic live on a computer screen, and now I can see its function.
I
Same
was
thing with
just at
you
an
know.
event with some doctors, and I know about the Raman spectroscopy, but they said there's multiple. Heard it. They told me two devices. They didn't have a pen. They told me two devices that can find the harmonic structure of a cell scientifically, totally scientifically.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to resonate the liver, that's probably not a good example, because the liver is unimaginably complex with different
Mm.
densities, and they all have different frequencies. Say the
500 functions the liver. That
say,
means
yeah, say,
500 sets of
yeah, say the
frequencies.
kidney or
Holy
the
moly.
spleen, a simple one, a simple organ, the kidney or the spleen, that's simple, that wouldn't be so complex. It's made of so many different parts and cells and atoms and stuff like that. You really need to look for the macro resonance, and that's what you're finding with the muscle testing. You're saying to the brain, what frequency shall I use for the right kidney? And I show a person a picture, or they put their hand over their kidney, or they show them a picture of the kidney, and it self-references back to the blueprint in your brain, and the kidney's got a red flag flashing next to it because it's got a problem. That initiates alarm response. All your muscles get weak just by looking at the picture. And now I can do the same thing. I can play different tones until the weak muscle gets strong, and now I found a frequency, a macro frequency for the kidney as a whole. And I'm relying on the fact that the quantum computer under the hood has made all the necessary calculations of different densities and atomic structures and cellular differences and stuff, and come up with a solution to this problem. For us to try to pick that apart would require, a quantum computer mainframe or something. I mean,
No big deal.
yeah, no big deal. It's like all you need is a few $1 million every month.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, okay. So,
but we're in agreement on the fact that in the bigger picture, um, the holistic world and the quantum science world, as opposed to the medical world and the Newtonian physics world, which believes that it doesn't exist if you can't see it, and it obeys the laws of Newton, and the quantum world doesn't seem to obey those laws at all. Time goes forwards and backwards, things pop in and out of existence. I mean, Schrodinger's cat is alive and dead at the same time, and all of the insane, crazy things there. Holistic health is quantum medicine. And modern medicine, as we understand it, the allopathic approach, is still back in the Newtonian world. And those two systems are now coming head to head. And the population in general on Earth is waking up more and more and more to modern medicine doesn't really have the answer to my health. It has the answer to an emergency situation I've gotten myself into because I haven't taken care of my health, or I've been in an accident and then I have to reset my bone or emergency operation or something. That's where they shine. There needs to be world-class research centers with all the super cool equipment that modern medicine gets to play with in the holistic realm. We are the ones who need to not even have to think twice when we have this discussion. We run back to the lab and we've got an fMRI machine and a squid device and a $500,000 brain mapping EEG machine to rely on, and all kinds of other cool stuff that we get to play with to explore this new realm that's opening up in the quantum field that the modern medicine Newtonian scientific community is not going there at all. They think it's poo-poo.
right, right. Well, okay. So imagine this. We've got the technology and we got enough money and we figure out the physical body frequencies and using little AI for all 70 trillion cells, right? We get it all figured out, but people are still dying because, as most psychics and even Alice Bailey, I was just reading, says 90% of all disease comes from emotions. And
Emotional
10%, actually, I said 80%, then 10% comes from the mind, which can create emotions as well. So when you put it in perspective, I mean, really what we need, and so, okay, now with emotions, it's really first, it's about letting them go, let it go, let it go, let it flow, right? And then the other is about going to higher states of consciousness where those negative emotions don't exist, right? When you're one with the universe,
or
there's
they don't.
no
I
there's
mean,
no anxiety.
that's why you have to sort of balance and clean and heal yourself before you go stepping through these etheric doorways. And
Yeah, it's hard to get there if you haven't cleared out all your stuff, huh?
you can't fit through the eye of the needle that way. But if you manage to, you're like a spiritual bull in a china shop, and you create all kinds of havoc in etheric realms. You know,
Just take ayahuasca or just skip it.
yeah, the psychedelic psychiatrist. Yeah.
Right.
But one thing that I saw in practice with patients coming in with all these gnarly conditions, because I was sort of the witch doctor at the end of the trail when all the other stuff had failed, they come to me. So I saw these crazy conditions. And one thing that started to become clear was deep down, everybody's got the same condition. This inability to handle stress. And that is physical, it affects physical, mental, and emotional systems. Because if I'm messed up physically with a lot of symptoms, then I'm feeling bad emotionally about that because I can't get any help and I'm losing hope. And that is another stress in an already overstressed system to handle. And so now that makes me worse and it makes me feel worse about it. And now I've got a vicious cycle going. And then I start to eventually develop a self-defeating belief system in my mental apparatus that I'm never going to be able to find help. No matter how much I spend or who I go see, I'll never get well. Right? Those kind of systems have to be eradicated. But let's say that we take 20 people who've got exactly the same low back pain. Each person is identical to everybody else. And this person here is 90% physical because they tried to lift something too heavy and it screwed up their disc, right? And 5% emotional feeling about that and 5% self-defeating belief system. I can't find anybody to fix me. And the next person is 75% emotional and 10% physical. And you know what I mean? Every single person would have a different percentage mix of physical, emotional, mental, because there's the words physical, emotional, and mental are just semantics that people made up to describe something that never had divisions in the first place. There's no place where my physical body ends, my emotions begin. It's this smooth thing. So it means that nobody could have any kind of a problem in any of those three centers without the other two involved. So it is kind of like a spider web, though. Any place that you come in and tweak that web, it ripples through the whole web and affects all the other systems. So when I come in with my technology that is this HRV system and sound waves and watching how the sound waves affect you on a screen of some kind, my input is in the neurological system, a neurological master control system. But the second system to that is the biochemical system. And the third system is the acupuncture electromagnetic system. And then there's others like the chakra systems and stuff like that. But any avenue I want to come in, that's why people who do advanced nutritional counseling can affect the autonomic system through biochemistry, or the acupuncturist can affect both those systems with acupuncture. Um, but it gets better if I'm doing the neurological system and balancing your biochemistry and working on your meridians at the same time, all simultaneously. And that relates to specific states of consciousness and specific brainwave frequency patterns that I can entrain you to, and then I can activate your vibration sense system in the sound chair. And you know what I mean?
Nice.
We stack
As I always
all of
say,
this stuff together, and the more precisely we can stack different things together, the more powerful and exponential this thing gets, until
yeah,
if you stack the minimum number together properly, you have the possibility of opening the magic door.
yeah. As I always
Which
say, the more ways
new
you lead
the
a horse to
top.
water, the more chances it'll drink.
Well, you can bring the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But you can hold its nose and pour water down its throat.
Well, if you bring it,
Stack the deck in your favor, right?
the more ways you bring a horse to the water, I mean, get it at all the different levels, then there's more likely something's going to happen. Nice.
Yes. So I think the only way that we end up with getting the holistic model in a mainstream acceptance for what it deserves is each technique has to be somehow founded in some scientific instrumentation that can prove objectively that what you're doing is working.
No soul, huh? No soul.
Well, I mean, from a clinical standpoint, this is also an interesting one. The whole double-blind study thing. So I see all these people with, say, PTSD, and I get good responses, but I don't have a double-blind study, so it's sort of discounted as anecdotal. But from a clinical standpoint, anecdotal means that people got better. And that is the ultimate test of any system. Did they get better or did they not get better? And how can we differentiate the getting better from maybe a placebo response? But from the standpoint of the person who got better, they don't care. They don't care what percentage was a placebo response or not. That's all they want, is to get better. So from a clinician standpoint, you're throwing the whole plate of spaghetti at the wall. You don't care who sticks and who doesn't stick. And the researcher is counting each strand of a spaghetti and testing it separately to see what it does. The problem with that model is that you can't research holistic technologies that way, because holistic technologies, by their nature, are combining different elements together specifically to maximize their effect. Yes, each and every element has its own effect, but the whole thing becomes more and more and more powerful to a point when you stack them together that an alleviation of a disease can take place.
Right. I think of, like, okay, trying to in my research class that I teach, clinical research, I mean, to be able to test a frequency or a bowl is like ridiculous, because the way you play the bowl and transition to another instrument and the whole flow of one to another with your intention is actually what does the healing. And so it's like
exactly.
so to take
That's
that one
exactly. So
part,
it's the problem with double-blind studies is removing as many variables as possible, and that is impossible.
yeah.
So let's go back. Once we understand the implications of a quantum run universe, then the whole concept of double-blind studies falls apart. Because, just to reiterate for anybody out there, double-blind study means group A is going to get the real drug, group B is going to get a sugar pill, and group C is not going to have anything done as a control group. And the doctor who dispenses the pills to the various people doesn't know which pills are what. That's the double blind. The doctor can't influence by knowledge. The problem is that doctor who doesn't know is friends and colleagues with the people who do know. And that means they're entangled. And that means that a deep unconscious networked mind connection, this person does know in their deepest unconscious mind, and that's where sabotaging of a test takes place, is from the deep unconscious. So is no possible way to remove that variable. Can't be done. And then there's the other problem. When you look at most of the double-blind studies that have been done, they've been funded for researching the new pill that some pharmaceutical company is going to make. And the FDA says that if group A who gets the drug has a 70% response, then we'll stamp it with approval, as long as it doesn't kill too many people. Right? So there's some kind of collateral damage percent that we'll accept, So now that means that the hidden statistic here is group A is going to be given the real pill, group B is going to be given the sugar pill. And we know that group B with the sugar pill, 35% of those people are going to respond from the placebo effect because they believe they got the pill. Their belief did something and manufactured whatever neurochemicals were necessary to make the effect take place. That's mind-blowing. But the hidden statistic is group A. 35% of group A is placebo response by definition, whether they got the real pill or not. That means that when you add the whole thing up, 35% of group A, 35% group B, 70% of the response in the trial was placebo and 35% was drug. It's
way stronger. Placebo, which
so
is intention and belief.
Why aren't we, spending all this money on research into the placebo effect and the possibility of the body entering into some quantum state where healing takes place, because you can't press it into a pill and sell it with a salesman.
It's interesting. Yeah. So, with the Research Foundation, we've got now 800 doctors and sound therapists, and we've been creating treatment plans. I got to that point where I thought, what's the point of trying to prove things? To a certain extent, it's helpful. And for certain things, if we could find the frequency of the nerves for pain that, fill up the nerves and stop the pain, which with $1 million, I bet you we could get rid of half of pain right now. That's pretty cool. But for the most part, where I've gotten is, let's have a think tank instead of start doing research and figure out how it all works and do research projects to figure it out how it all works, right? Which we've got a concept now for probably the first time ever. They had it all figured out in ancient times and ancient cultures, but they didn't know how to describe it, I don't think, in the language that we now have. Right. So we now have a concept as to where to go. We just need a bunch of money. Right. So it's really, we're so, because if we figure out how it all works, the overall flow systems and at how many different levels and how they interact, that's the Holy Grail right there. It's really the Holy Grail.
Yeah, in clinical practice, I was always pounding on the door of research. No research money comes to me, so I spend my own money. The one thing that occurred to me when I was in the clinic in Virginia and had this big clinic, was very successful in doing this sound thing. After a while, I was there for 9 years. So towards the end of that, it started to become really obvious that the sound work I was doing was more powerful than all the other things that I was doing combined. And I was doing everything. Sound was so much more powerful and had such a bigger effect that it sort of was blowing my mind. And I'm thinking, nobody's doing this kind of work with sound. I should be doing this full time. I should be pushing the envelope of this. And then I realized that I actually could do that if I put my money where my mouth was. I mean, I could sell this clinic, I cash in my chips, I could sell the clinic, I could sell my house, I could take a big bundle of money and go to the only place where they don't lock you up for these crazy ideas, California. So here I am, and set up a big center and just research that full time and do that full time and do a patient practice with sound centered on this effect. And once I released finding frequencies for each organ or gland or meridian or whatever, or vertebra or whatever I found in my testing was out and had a problem and needed to be assisted to be fixed. So I'm finding different frequencies for different vertebrae and resonating them back into place. I'm finding frequencies for an organ, confirming it with a blood test. You know, I'm doing something to your liver and liver enzymes are normalizing. I'm still floundering. I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing it all with muscle testing. And then when I started thinking of the brain is also an organ. So what if we found the frequency for the brain, because the brain's job is to tell everybody else what to do? That was the holy grail of the holistic idea. That the only reason that you're sick is because the internal physician program is not doing its job for some reason, which means it's probably blocked from accomplishing that job. So as a holistic practitioner, your job is to remove whatever blockages are happening. And the blockages that I was seeing over and over again was sympathetic overload, that you're stuck in a fight or flight response you can't get out of. And then I started to suspect that the reason for that was not only your personal story of traumas, but the 21st century itself, which is starkly abnormal. I mean, your body was, your present biological system was designed for 20,000 years ago. It takes tens of thousands of years of adaptive evolution to change, to slow changes in the Earth's environment over time. We got plenty of time to manipulate our DNA generation after generation to slowly shift and change, but not since the advent of the 20th century, where all hell started breaking loose in the Industrial Revolution. Now the information revolution is accelerating. There's frequencies coming out of my walls, fumes coming out of my carpet, and I go outside and I'm bombarded by 5,000 radio channels, FM, AM, shortwave 1 and 2, and military frequencies that we're not even aware of, 5G and smart meters, and then you get in your car in a traffic jam going to a stupid job.
And there's other people's thoughts and scattered thoughts all around you. Right?
Essentially, compare that to how the body is designed. I wake up with the sun in the morning and I grab my spear and I go chase some little animal. Sympathetic turns on for both of us, but it's all over in 5 or 6 minutes. Somebody's going to wear out. It's a straw fire. And then it comes back. I got the animal, it comes back. I go and I cook the animal, I eat the animal, and parasympathetic turns on, uses the energy for that purpose. And then when that's done, it closes back down. Internal physician comes back and starts working on my list. That's normal, that's healthy. But this is insanity. So now we've got a body designed for a sprint in an environment that never stops, of a marathon of stresses the body was never designed to handle. So the survival technique the body comes up with is to just mash the gas pedal and bullnose your way through life with momentum as a survival tactic. But then, of course, you can't sleep because you're afraid to let go of the momentum, because you're going to have to kickstart it from zero tomorrow morning when the alarm clock goes off, and that puts you at a survival disadvantage. So what do we have? A global epidemic of chronic insomnia in most of the population because they can't sleep because they're too stressed out.
And anxiety.
So that's sort of my take. I know that system works to alleviate symptoms. Mix in with that brainwave frequency entrainment to known brain states that are associated with different conditions. For instance, the discovery of default mode network in 2001, 4 zones in the brain that are in tight synchronicity with each other, with a brain frequency that's the slowest ever measured. 1 brain pulse every 10 seconds to every 20 seconds. Super slow. And then the research starts to show that when these 4 zones come unsynchronized, it's every major neurological condition that you've ever heard of. ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, autism, epilepsy, depression, PTSD, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, on and on, the list goes on. All of those conditions have this one thing in common: desynchronizing of the 4 zones of the default mode network. As a matter of fact, in Alzheimer's, the amyloid plaquing is only forming on those 4 zones. And then the discovery of gamma. We have something similar with gamma brain activity. Deficiencies in these states of consciousness cause neurological problems and diseases. So if we can combine finding frequencies that break the vicious cycle of the stress thing going on and return the internal physician back into the saddle where it can work on its list, and we direct where that list is going to go with brain entrainment, we have a real handle on most of the major diseases that are out there. Just as a way of healing people, while on the side, we've got a big research institute to do the bigger work of mapping all of the vibrational frequencies of the whole body down to an atomic level as the master project that humanity should be pursuing, equivalent to going to Mars and building a 1 million person colony. Let's take that energy and that money and put it into understanding the core of consciousness itself and how consciousness affects my health and how consciousness affects my standing in the universe as a sovereign being in the universe whose duty is to find out why I'm here and what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, it's like, that's where humanity should be putting its effort, and not guns and bullets and soldiers and wars and politics and money, no matter who gets hurt. So ass backwards.
I think it's going to happen. I really think
it's
going to
happening.
happen.
It's
I mean,
happening.
it's like it's so inspiring. To just, you know, in this talk, I mean, it's like, oh my God, somebody's going to get it one day and say, okay, here, take the whole trillion.
Yeah. It'll be some angel investor trillionaire whose daughter gets sick. And that's when they realize the modern medical system does not have the answer.
Right.
And then when they're faced on searching through the holistic world to find out who does have the answer, they realize that it's the Wild West. That who am I supposed to go to? I have no idea. I can't look it up. There's no organization that gives some kind of certification of excellence, or, you know what I mean? It's that's a problem to solve.
Well, I got a question that's interesting, and it's kind of a funny question. So, how does AI play into this? And I have to tell you this because, you know, I figure AI can really help a lot. And then this one intuitive that I was working with, she goes, my guide said, do not do the AI on the body because it will open up a portal as to how everything works that dark forces can use.
Well, I mean, you're talking about turning the whole thing over to an AI doctor and no human being involved. That's dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've kept up with AI. Shay and I have, Shay's my son who runs my companies. We've explored it extensively just because we're a high-tech company and I want to know what's going on in the world. And this is obviously rising. I mean, you can't turn away from it. It's on its way. The train is coming to the station. So you can't ignore it away. So where I see it shine the most is as a helper. So, for instance, I want to write some copy for an ad, and I'm trying to explain the unimaginable complexity of what I'm up to. Heart rate variability, sympathetic, parasympathetic, brainwave entrainment, and primordial sounds. And I mean, just like people blank out.
Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
lot.
it's like Einstein said, if you can't explain it in an elevator in 2 minutes to a 6-year-old, you have no idea what you're doing.
I
You
get
know,
it. At
so
least I get it. Yeah.
right. So I write the whole thing out. It might be 10 pages, and we bring ChatGPT in and say, condense this down to 3 paragraphs. And it does this thing in like 10 seconds that just completely blows your mind. The absolute essence of what you're trying to communicate has been boiled down in the most unimaginably beautiful way. And you just kind of sit back and go, okay, what the hell does this mean? I mean, let me grok this. I couldn't have come up with that myself. I couldn't have done that. And it took 5 seconds where it would have taken me days and days of agonizing trying to do that job. So the end result is that people can now understand what I'm doing. And it builds my practice. And I make more money so I can open it up bigger and do more research and help more people. So now that's a good thing.
Cool.
But if I was to turn AI loose and relinquish my hand off the steering wheel, then who knows where it's going to go? It's that's not its how its ultimate purpose is, I believe. I mean, the opposite end of that is, you know, the 50s sci-fi movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, with Klaatu and Gort, the big 8-foot silver robot, right? The purpose of that film was him to bring a message to Earth that says, get your act together or we're going to have to burn your planet to a cinder because we can't have aggression in the universe. That's for small entities. And now that you're going into space, then the jig is up. And we've solved our problem by creating a race of intelligent robots that we have completely relinquished all control to. It's the galactic police force who neutralizes aggression wherever they see it. And we have no control over that anymore. And now we're all at peace, kind of a deal. That's fraught with difficulties because right next to that is Skynet and Terminator. And
So
so,
I'd like to go back to the default mode network for a minute because it sounds like these aren't lobes, right? The four areas.
no, there's zones of the cortex. So this frontal zone of the cortex, hang on a second, I just happen to have a visual aid.
Oh, cool.
Don't you love it? Got a visual aid here. So here's the brain, and we've got the frontal lobe here is one of the zones of the default mode network, and most of it is down between the hemispheres. Most people don't realize that the gray matter is not just on the outside here, but it goes on the inside. This is all gray matter too, all of this. So there's noodles here. All of that is gray matter. And so the default mode network is a small area on the outside, and on the inside is this huge zone. And then the posterior, the occipital lobe, is a small zone that goes all the way across, and most of it goes down between the hemispheres. And then there's two zones over here, the parietal temporal lobe, small ones on either side. And you see this line right here? That actually itself opens up. And so these two zones on the side here actually go inside the hemispheres here as well. So those are the 4 zones of the default mode network.
And they need to be in sync is the deal.
In a high degree of synchronicity with each other. So
Okay, so is it possible to find the overall notes and rhythms of those and then entrain that person into theirs?
yeah, that's exactly what I do with biotuning.
Okay,
So
okay,
gamma and default mode network are big ones I use for these neurological conditions and problems like that. But it goes beyond that. When it was first discovered in 2001, they were doing fMRI studies of somebody's brain for some other purpose. And they noticed this brain activity. Uh, and they wrote a paper about it. Then everybody jumps on the bandwagon, and my news feeds for the next, every month there's dozens of research articles. The first thing they realize is that the reason they call it the default mode function of the brain, the default mode network, the network is the 4 zones, and the mode of function is the default mode function of the brain. That means 95% of all brain function is the default mode. 5% off the top is you and me having this conversation and thinking this is the whole thing. All of your experiences as a person and a personality and all the conversations and things you've done in your life is just 5% off the top. The question is, what the hell's going on down there? What's going on underneath that hood? And it's described as mind wandering. It's random holographic mind wandering without a seeming purpose. But we know that the brain always has some higher order purpose. It's sort of like chaos theory. It looks chaotic until you step back too far and you realize there's a pattern. So they don't know exactly what that pattern is, but they do know that it's consolidating information, pruning and throwing away stuff that's not necessary, consolidating ideas, being creative and all kinds of other stuff. Then they realized that the 4 zones each has meaning. That the front zone is where I get my sense of self on the inside of my skin. And back here, occipital lobe is where I get my sense of self on the outside of my skin. And when you synchronize those two together, I get my normal, ordinary sense of self in between, inside versus outside, where I am in the world. These two, sense of time, all past events of my life up to the present, extended into anticipating into the future, 1 second, 1 minute, 1 year, synchronize those together, I get my normal sense of the present moment. So the next thing that happened was, what happens when the 4 zones start to become unsynchronized? That's a very bad thing. As soon as the 4 zones start to become unsynchronized, that's where you have every major neurological condition you've ever heard of. So the first thing that you would think is that if these start to become unsynchronized, you're messing around with your basic sense of self in time and space. So the first thing on the list would be dissociative disorders, right? And the extreme of that would be schizophrenia. In between that range is ADD and ADHD and autism. When it's high end of the spectrum, you start losing sense of self. All these different kind of conditions are flowing from that. Alzheimer's, it's all starting to break. My sense of self is breaking apart, and my memory is going, and my awareness is going, and and the amyloid plaquing is forming on these 4 zones. It's remarkable. So I'm sitting there looking at all these research reports coming through, and in typical fashion with research reports, they're all just reports of findings. Nobody's saying, well, what are you supposed to do about this? We know that if it's unsynchronized, it causes all these problems. Anybody got a pill for that? No. So it's abandoned. But I'm looking at that going, wait a second, that's what I do for a living. Binaural beats through headphones causes synchronicity. So if I take 2 tones here for these 2 and rotate them in 3-dimensional space to these tones, and put them together and then train you to a default mode network frequency that's an octave based on your fundamental tone that makes homeostasis autonomic nervous system,
You.
I found the key lock of default mode network for your brain. And that means I now uniquely in the whole damn world have discovered how to resynchronize the four zones for a super powerful treatment for all these different conditions.
Oh my God. This is so cool. It's also for the first time, the brain makes sense. Because I mean, describing all the different lobes and how they work together is hard to grok, right? It's hard to really, but
Yeah.
when you put it these four different areas, self and time and stuff, that's now it's like it's much simpler.
Then I decided to create a generic album for resynchronizing the four zones. That was beyond. Um, and so it's essential to listen with headphones because that's where you get synchronicity with headphones.
You're gonna have to start selling four headphones that are this and this.
Yeah. Right. No, that'd be cool. It's like the third eye sunglasses.
Right, right.
But but the thing about that was after I made that generic soundtrack and I'm listening to it and I love the soundtrack, I had this eureka that wait a second, I don't have any of these neurological conditions. My four zones are synchronized, thank you very much. And so what's going to happen when I listen to a synchronizing soundtrack for the four zones? Am I hyper synchronizing the four zones? And what would that do? And I swear, the next day, Science News comes through with another research article that's showing extremely high states of meditation associated with hypersynchronicity of the four zones.
Well, can't have too much love.
Article after article after article is measuring different types of meditation practice. Like one of them was TM, all
Wow.
associated with hypersynchronizing the four zones. So if you think about it for a minute, if these are my sense of self on the inside and outside of my skin, if I start hypersynchronizing those together, normal synchronization gives me my normal sense of self. But if I start hypersynchronizing them together, the edge of what I define as inside my skin begins to get funky. I can no longer tell where my skin ends and the universe begins. And the next thing I know, it appears as if the entire universe is inside my skin. That's cosmic consciousness, right? Same thing with time, that my sense of the present moment, if it starts to get hypersynchronized, all past and future events begin to meld together into some eternal now.
So here's the only
Right?
problem is just yeah, and people end up doing that all the time. And they'll be homeless and then they will
Yeah.
it's like why go to
Well, no,
work?
they become like the Buddha figure who sits
Yeah,
under a
why
tree.
go to work?
He's got the big fat belly, and people come and bring food offerings and sit at their feet and then leave him. But the guy is still there forever. He's graduated from mammal to plant, and maybe that's the right order of things. Who knows? It's like just think about it for a second. The plants are the number one species on the planet that we all depend on. We can't survive without plants because plants take in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. We breathe the oxygen, expel carbon dioxide, and we've got the cycle going. And the plants is what we eat, or we feed to the animals that we kill and eat. That it all depends on these plants, right? So really, you could look at maybe trees as farmers of humans. Sooner or later, you're going to die, and the tree is still going to be alive for another 1,000 years, and it's going to feed on your corpse as fertilizer. So perhaps it
That's
is the best way
hilarious.
to do is become a plant. You know, it's like
The trees are running the whole thing. That's
that's it. I'm running the whole thing, right? And myself, the soil is it's just one big hive mind. It's the Borg, you know.
I love it. Well, we're about out of time, but oh my God,
That's a good note to end on. Yeah, I think
yeah,
no, I
I
know
just
the real note to end on is to realize that that the energy powerhouse of the cell that you depend on to be alive, mitochondria, has got foreign DNA. It's a different creature in a symbiotic relationship with you. And there's more mitochondria than there is your cells. Add to that the microbiome of 25,000 different species of bacteria, all with different DNA.
Oh my God.
There's more bacteria with different DNA than you. So it means that we're sort of like the horse that is being ridden. And who's to say that our consciousness itself and our identity isn't this body at all with these cells? It's the mitochondria entity or something.
And then if you bring in the whole concept of soul, I mean, you know, it's like, I mean, I think of the soul as a pure frequency of the essence of you with all of its harmonics of everything you've learned around it, connected to a source, which is all frequencies, right?
I buy that. So deep down in the quantum field, consciousness organizes vibrational frequencies into standing waves and starts stacking and nesting them together based on music theory, harmonic and overtone relationships mathematically. And the further you zoom back from that, it coalesces together. It looks like a quark and a charm and an atom and a cell and a person. But really, you represent an almost infinite stack of harmonically, mathematically related standing waves stacked up together so it looks solid. But it's all vibration. There's nothing at the root of it, except from the standpoint of the sutras of Patanjali from India, 4,000-year-old texts in Sanskrit. What's at the root of it all? What's vibrating? We can't measure it, so we call it dark matter or something. Can't measure it. According to them, it's an idea in the mind of the godhood.
Which is the
Godhood is having a dream. And in that dream is an infinite number of ideas, and each one coalesces into form. You, me, everything. And then each piece is caused to forget and enters into the greatest heroic journey of all time to find out the true nature of my soul, right? And then we abandon that and get a job. And now we're in a circle over here, not abandon our path. And we're sick in our soul because we've abandoned the path, the journey. And we now mistakenly believe that we're just ordinary. People aren't star beings. Every atom in your body was not once inside of a star. All of the protons and all of the atoms in your body are the oldest particles in the universe, but that's just ordinary. Just a guy with a job, you know, drink beers with my buddies on the weekend, work my whole life, have kids, die. They grow up, get jobs in cubicles, and it's just ordinary. No, that's sickness. That's being ill.
So we could end on this one. We are all soul star beings.
Yep, absolutely.
We are.
Yeah.
May we all remember.
One student said to his teacher, "What's the best way to deal with other people?" Teacher says, "There are no other people."
We're all one. I love it. I love it. Well, just what a pleasure. I get so excited because the potential is so massive. I mean, we're talking ultimately one day we're going to get rid of all disease. It won't be us. It'll probably be another, you know, our next lifetime, but it's going to all be gone.
We're laying the groundwork right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you and chewing the fat.
How it all works. Yeah. One day.
Thanks a lot for everything you do, man. You're doing great work. I'm an admirer of what you're up to.
All right.
So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Till next time.
Okay.
Have a good one.